during training. After coming back from training in the Soviet Union, we were deployed by SISJP, our Chief of Communication, and we are so proud to be with her today, to establish and man local, regional, and international radio links. 3 principles guided us in our work. Reliability, meaning confirm source of information and ensure that information from the source to the recipient is undistorted, undiluted. 2, security. Security of information in our possession. Coding systems we used, indexing and filing keeping of messages, and ensure that no unauthorized access to our operational centers. 3, that principle, clandestine operation. Conduct our radio sittings undetected by the enemy, following our own standard operating procedures and protocols. The type of equipment we used was donated to the ANC by the Soviet Union, most of which was designed for special forces. We used heavily Morse code because the SADF was not good at it, they knew it. For technical field communications, we use voice in codes. The type of equipment we used ranged from portable, fixed, and vehicle-mounted radio systems. Our radio operations were overt and covert. Overt was when a fixed powerful transmitter would communicate with the portable transceiver operated by our specially trained signalers. It maintained communication between facilities, at times with ANC offices. It also used in support of tactical operations like reconnaissance, convoys, marches, etc. Covert communications equipment was used by highly trained communications secret radio operators, which some of which the state has mentioned were operating inside the country and also in frontline state. They were in covert communication, using sophisticated radio equipment of the time and applying special standards operating procedures to avoid detection by the enemy. Let us look at the type of equipment we use on deployment environments. The Type 57 field telephone system. Type 57 field telephone set is powered from old rechargeable batteries or powered centrally from the exchange. Operations range can go up to 40 kilometers depending on the cable used. But for us, it was used for distances not more than 5 kilometers. It was connected to a central exchange from units identified in the military base. Base commander is this line connected to. Sometimes the telephone set was linked at the base communication center to a field radio station, the R109M, via an exchange to increase the range to other units in the camp. One of the first radio is R105D. Is an ultra-short wave or a VHF portable field radio station with frequency range of 36 to 45.1 megahertz. Receiver sensitivity of 1.5 microvolt. Omar used to say, when you say sensitivity, should still tell the owner. Yeah, but in German, they also say in German, they will say sensitivity is us. So it's got that very low sensitivity with a possible extension with a 1.5 height meter antenna. called Ulipo antenna, flexible quick antenna, called Ulipo, we call it Ulipo antenna. With a possible extension to 2.7 meters for longer distances. It had operational range up to 10 kilometers when using omnidirectional wave antenna and up to 25 kilometers when using progressive wave directional antenna with counterpoints. R15N VHF2 portable transceiver. The frequency range is 21.5 to 28.5 megahertz. It is a solid state and differs from R15D in frequency range, and that it was mostly solid state, smaller, lighter, and more reliable. The 311 high frequency receiver, widely integrated into different communication systems with ground forces and aviation because of its frequency range from 1 to 15 megahertz, subdivided into bands. Very good sensitivity and selectivity. Economic and easy to troubleshoot and carefully pairs as it operated on 8 standardized valves, meaning operated in ability to recover reception loss quickly. Reception was continuous wave and amplitude modulation was not geared for single sideband, but can be easily upgraded. We used it in R118M in our BTR, that is armed personal carrier communications vehicles, and at times as a standalone receiver, since the antenna system could use Ulipo antenna and bare copper wire antenna. The R123 HF-VHF mounted transceiver forms part of communication system in a tank or armored personnel carrier. It uses valve technology and frequency band 1 is 20 to 35.75 megahertz, band 2 35.75 megahertz to 51.50 megahertz. Transmitter power output is 20 watts using a 4 kilometer tank rod type antenna of a 6 meter telescopic antenna. Our station was mounted to the Soviet BTR armored personal carrier type. It was used in the Northern Front in Angola to provide technical support to our units in engagements with UNITA, supported by SATF. R118, a mounted communications transmitter using valve technologies. It used power amplifier valve GO50 and GO80. GO means scheme, but GO is Russian. So we call it GO50 and GO80. The transmitter could deliver up to 200 watts transmitter power output if you use the bigger valve, and 100% for all modes of communications, AM and continuously. We did not operate it in full blast, and yet it could still reach Tanzania and Maputo from Angola at 20% from continuous wave transmission. The radio system built around this transmitter receiver with, it was R109, 311, which is HF receiver with 1 microvolt receiver sensitivity. The main receiver being R250 with the multiplexing capability, enhanced noise reduction, etc. R1 and this station R118 used to call it Magogo. In short, call it Magogo. You know why they call it Magogo. They will tell us today. The R140 mounted radio station, one of the sophisticated Soviet Army radio stations with signaling encryption capabilities. It used sophisticated modulations that made it possible to impossible to intercept. Could even hide as a transmission source. You know, when a radio transmits, the enemy can detect the source which the emission is coming from. But this radio could hide that. On tactical support, it is more powerful than R118, as it could beam at 1 kilowatt as opposed to 200 watts of 118. We deployed this station R140 in our radio network backbone. It was also used in covert communications to communicate with the front. For covert communications, we used 393 radio R393 and R354 portable high-frequency transceivers operating on Morse code. The 354 was a more sophisticated portable transceiver, as it also used burst transmission, which made it impossible to intercept. Messages could be coded, recorded, and transmitted in very short bursts. We operated on ground and sky waves communication modes. Frequency prognosis. Operating at HF band requires good frequency determination to ensure which frequency to use and at what time, at which solar cycle. Frequency planning for our radio links was done at our head office, as SJK said, where radio seating, frequency schedules, and call signs were drawn. My colleagues will continue the story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonny-Paul. As you might have heard, that Sonny-Paul is the one who designed most of the radio network to connect Lusaka to Luanda, to connect Lusaka to Harare, from Harare to Dar es Salaam, from Lusaka to Mbarara, or in Harare, right up to the front. And these distances are very long. And to design communication systems that is clandestine and that must not be picked up by the enemy requires art, science, and skill. And again, all the people who did this are on here. Thank you again, Jackie, and for training people like Sonny-Paul, who later served in the government, until he retired in the Department of Communications. I will now introduce one of the people that Jackie talked about, from the Basel, who is retired Brigadier General, and who did a lot of work, both in the clandestine inside the country, but he will talk more about electronic warfare and the future of electronic warfare and why countries must develop this. He was responsible for electronic warfare in the SANDF until he stepped down and retired. Over to you.
I don't know what to say. Good day, Major General JP Setibe. And we are also honored to have Sis Baleka with us today. I want to also recognize his generals as Colonel. I think we have Major General Luke Bradley and Brigadier General Chino. Brigadier General Peters, and I should think there are colonels that are present here today, and I recognize all soldiers, moral officers, non-commissioned officers that are here with us today. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this very important session, of which we are so very proud about. We are proud members of CC. As you have heard, our history stretches from the 60s. Well, some of us then were not even an idea, but we managed today to tell to those that were the likes of Sister who through his commanders, or Comrade Paul and Comrade Moses, our major instructor, and I think Comrade Said Bilal Kateka or someone is one of the comrades of Fuji Land Super Ferry. And he said, behavior like we say underground. Some over 1994 service. Thank you. I was tasked to prepare a paper here on electronic software, and it is not because I was underground performing these tasks where we made sure that ESATF, we exposed it to be nothing in as far as communication. They couldn't. Even in 1995, I always sat down with some of their officers talking about communication, of how we communicated. They did confirm that we wouldn't have managed to get you. And really the equipment that we had was 20 years ahead to them. So thanks to the Soviets who trusted us with that equipment. It is said it was the first time that equipment left Russia to be used by outsiders, West for the liberation movement. But we succeeded in doing everything. You will remember there was an operation Vula. We were part of that operation. And it was possible, that operation, because of the organization of communication, which came from the offices of CISGB. They organized it to an extent where Tamil will only issue an order that says rise. And the ANC was blaming the armed uprising. That's why the flooding of weapons in the country, of which is our problem today. But let's not go there. My paper today is going to focus on electronic software, and I think there are members here who have been in the regiment known as 5 Signal Regiment in the National Defense Force. Selby is also one of them. The 5 Signal Regiment is part of the units that now are handled by Comrade General Peters, who is here today. I hope I'm not exposing you in anything. I won't mention things. I'll try and focus and be technical as possible. I hope you were not bored about the technical aspects of our radio communication, which Comrade Moses presented. I know at times that can really bore one who is not in the environment. But for us who are in this environment, we get excited when we hear these things. And I'm more excited when I'm about to present this paper to you today in relation to electronic software. And the purpose of my paper today is to trigger interest, mostly from our youth that is here today, to reconsider the fields of study, because this field of electronics is a very sensitive field, of which if a country is not in a position to function in this field, you better give it as a highs and to fight like the days of Chuck. Otherwise, without this, your war is over before it can even start. So that is the purpose of the thing, just to trigger that. And for those of us that were in the system, to know that now that you are out of the system, it's not the end of the day. You can still participate with the knowledge you have. You can still assist in ensuring that these environments are advanced. So because of the practical experience we have, we can influence the development of electronic software. And it is said that men who ignore the past are doomed to relive it. This is George Santayana, a well-renowned philosopher and a critic. Meaning, if we are to not to look back at where we come from and how things were happening, then we are going to really go into the same pitfalls that some of us want to do. So mistakes in the military are some things that we need to really make sure that we do not accept. Mistakes are not accepted in the military because mistakes can be costly, cost lives of your soldiers, and it will cost you to the equipment that you are using. You will know that the equipment that you are using is a very expensive equipment. So if we are going to neglect it, then we are going to experience problems there also. So that's why you will find that the military exercises a lot before going to war. They will practice and practice until they sharpen their skill. When they get there, less bad. Otherwise, if they don't do that, then that unit is doomed to fail in its mission. And if one of them comes back, they are lucky. The history of EW, as we know it, you will know that various people will have different perceptions about the history. And it depends, you are saying this history coming from which environment. Here, there is a belief that this originated in the Second World War with the British German of the German blind bombing raids, the nickname and the excreted wine crate. This excellent account of the electronics warfare can be found in Alfred Price's books. Alfred Price wrote a lot of books. He was a Air Force pilot, and he was also a pilot himself. He wrote a lot of books in relation to military history. He was a popular author on aviation and related topics. He wrote over 40 books and 200 magazine articles. It is a known fact that history is written by those who conquered and resisted. And in this case, Britain, America, Russia, and China are contesting the origins of EW. As some say, EW was there since the introduction of wire communications. And I want to agree with the latter, as we saw the introduction of wire communications and metallic circuit or tube circuit wire was developed and patented by Alexander Graham Bell in 1881. So that's quite far from the Second World War. This was followed by the discovery of railways, which was first identified and studied by German physicist Henry Hertz in 1886. The first practical radio transmitters and receivers were developed around 1885 to 1896 by Italian Guglielmo Marconi, and radio began to be used commercially around 1900. Therefore, we can safely say that the history of electronic warfare goes back to at least the beginning of the 20th century. The earliest documented consideration of EW was during the Russo-Japanese War, 1904-1905. Remember the Japanese War between the Russians and the Japanese. And this is many years before the Second World War. So we are talking electronic warfare, and there's many of us here who are not in the environment of communications. I would like to just briefly describe what electronic warfare is. And not necessarily expecting you to write exams after this, and you won't be really expected to present it and just for your knowledge and for the understanding of the discussion that we are about today. I would like, before getting too deep in the subject, for the benefit of those that hear about it for the first time into this background. Electronic warfare is described as any action, the use of electronic magnetic spectrum or directed energy to control spectrum. Now we use flares in spectrum match, but this is meant to attack an enemy or impede any enemy assault. The purpose of electronic warfare is to deny the opponent the advantage of and ensure friendly, unimpeded access to electronic magnetic spectrum. The electronic warfare best described by the military now. They will say it is defined by the Department of Defense in South Africa as military activities that use electronic magnetic energy to control electromagnetic spectrum, the spectrum, and attack the enemy. The spectrum is a range of frequencies, if we can describe it, a range of frequencies for electromagnetic energy. So frequencies may start from specific, depending on which radios we are talking about. They will start, for instance, on the HF from a specific frequency to another frequency. That is known as a spectrum. But each and every radio which will operate on HF or VHF, they've got their specific spectrums that they are operating under. And the electronic warfare, it enables joint electromagnetic spectrum operations. So these are the operations that I mentioned already, where you are using it to attack or to protect your own environment. And the elements that we will find within the electronic warfare will be electronic attack, as I mentioned. That attack in the communication sphere means disruption of your communications to degrade, destroy, or deceive the enemy. So that whole spectrum, if that is happening, you are not in a position to communicate effectively with your troops, meaning you cannot issue orders that enable you to do what your mission expects of you. And there's electronic protection, which is previously known as electronic countermeasures. Then we know those members as ECCM. This is meant to prevent your receiver from being jammed, meaning we come in then, that's why we have your frequency hopping. You are avoiding an enemy jamming your reception. That's where it gets. And the electronic warfare support these actions taken by an operational commander or operator to detect, intercept, locate, and so on. The station, that transmitting station, there's a systems that we will use to see where is one transmitting. And that's how then we managed to maneuver the Boers. So we didn't give them time enough to identify our stations inside South Africa, because our stations were very fast, transmitting about 250 groups a minute. If you will see in their ties, there's numbers, and these numbers are, there's about 5 numbers that is called a group. Now, you do this after you receive your message. It's then that you're going to code your message, and your message will be in groups of 5 numbers. Those groups may be up to 20 or maybe 15, but that message is complete. So that station would transmit 250 groups per minute, meaning it was just a split second for us to transmit a message from here to Lusaka, because it was just a simple press of button. After you have coded your messages, you press your button and the script is gone. So before the EW stations here can identify you, you are gone. And we were only given by the Office of SysJD 1 minute to establish communication. In 1 minute, you must be established, meaning we had to be on time. If it's 9 o'clock, it's not 5 to 9, it's not 5 past, it's 9 o'clock. And immediately you establish communication in that minute. After that, you simply press. Meaning, in 1 minute, split second, you finished with the communication. You are gone. And the Boers couldn't really manage to do that. We did the test with them, and even when we told them we will be transmitting from here to them, they couldn't do it. That one was arranged. There was a general from Brookhaven, and Weisman, Charlie, and those tests were conducted with Ulfuli. The systems present, I still say even the present systems will not manage that station. And unfortunately, so that is very true. There's also what is known as LEIT, electronics intelligence. These are part and parcel of what is happening within the EW environment. These are sections that you will find when you will get into the EW environment. And the LEIT mostly was seen firstly in the 1960s during the Vietnam War and played a major role. Many military planes were fitted with warning receivers on this, and Germany could manage to counter the North Vietnamese anti-aircraft. You've heard of radio jamming. Radio jamming is something that really can frustrate a lot of an operator. If that radio is jammed, it changes from this frequency to that frequency, but still is followed. That person will not be able to transmit to receive any information because it's the receiver that is being jammed. And the electronic protection measures, I think we mentioned something about protection about ECR that we talked about. As I said, you're not going to write an exam on this, but it's just for your information to know what that is. And the signals intelligence. This oversees the collection and exploration of electromagnetic signals. It includes communications and non-communication signals. They operate sophisticated equipment to gather, sort, and scan foreign communications and non-communications. We've got these facilities in South Africa. They are short of the defense of this country pertaining to that. We do have, let alone that we may not necessarily be at the level of some First Nations, if I may call it that. But we do have this, and as I said, the commander is here who is looking after your security in this environment. How EW has been used in the past decades. That's why I wanted to come to. We spoke of the Russo-Japan War, and if you will remember that war, EW won. That war was won because of EW. If you remember, the captain of that ship of the Russians, Captain Orel, requested initially to disrupt, but it was denied by his commander. And that led to the failure of their mission and the sinking of that ship. You will remember about the U-boats. U-boats, you talk about U-boats from the sphere of the Second World War. That's where Germans came in with U-boats. But those U-boats, even though they were very advanced, because of EW, they couldn't manage to do what they really wanted to do because of what happened to them. Remember, there was death rays in the 1920s, and the death rays were also a type of a system that was able to disorganize the opponents. But because of the use of these death rays, they could really not manage to penetrate. The third one was the Battle of Britain in 1940, turning the tide of the radar. That's when the radar is introduced now into the systems. That's when a radar was able to pick up planes as they were taking off. So radar was used, but radar was also vulnerable to electronic warfare, and the radar could be suppressed. Very many technologies came in after that, where radar could be blinded and could not see a plane that is coming. That is before coming of your stealth, those planes that were coated with stealth, and they couldn't manage to really get into their targets. And during the Cold War, we saw it jamming on industrial scale. And those are the Russians that were heavily engaged in this. And the Soviet Union were known to be heavy. And each and every country in America, the Chinese, they all had trouble with Russians jamming their radio station. And I told him today, Russians seem to be moving forward and to be far advanced, let alone that Chinese are handling things, and we are told that Chinese are coming up heavily also on this environment. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, I think we all remember what happened then. The Cubans were using Russian EW systems. For them to succeed, for that blockade not to be successful, it was because of those systems by the Russians, but given to the Cubans. And the US invasion of Panama in 1989, here the Panamanian forces, Air Force, the Panamanian EW could not be able to tackle the US invasion because their systems were suppressed. And as the systems were suppressed, they just saw a swarm of planes. And we are talking of attack planes that came in, and thus that war could not last long. Fast forward, we saw the field and government devices. These were used up until 2014, and they are called from the Kasule Institute of Technology, and they demonstrated fog action. And this is new technology where this fog happened to cover all those that were expecting reception. And through that, the attackers managed to move through the fog itself. It is well known that the Russian electronic warfare capabilities have been a major factor in the fighting in Ukraine. We know what has happened in the Ukraine just in 2014. The Ukraine forces couldn't do anything. They could not move. They couldn't transmit every radio station, every transmitter, every receiver could not receive because they were suppressed by the Russians either. And a month earlier, the Kremlin launched the operation to seize control of the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine as well. These are the advances then that we saw. And in 2014-15, Russia effectively jammed Ukrainian Motorola. Now that is the industry. It's not even the military. And they were suppressed heavily. And according to some of these, you will find them on the Aviation Week's Defense, edited by Eddie Trimble. The Russian frequency target the smartphones of soldiers. Remember, we were talking about from the military, the industry, and now if you are taking smartphones, our phones, you are taking individuals now. So those individuals' phones were also suppressed, wrong information transmitted into their phones. And the situation where they are given false information about their wives, because you must know this is intelligence, about their wives, girlfriends, so soldiers got frustrated there. No one is able to communicate to no one. Only the Russians are in a position to do that. That's why I say if your country is not in a position to defend itself here, you better get spears of China. And otherwise you won't make it here. But how did we participate? That's where I want to go in. How did we, as MK Signals, participate in that? You had Sis pointing or narrating on operators that were throughout Africa and in South Africa. In South Africa, we were, I think, 3 or 4 operators. I wouldn't know because I was talking to Lusaka, but I know of one in Transvaal, Comrade Tabo, of which she mentioned. We would talk with the Comrade Tabo. I was in the roving unit. Thus, I was in a position to transmit from various areas, including KwaZulu-Natal, including Gauteng. So that's how we moved as far as our transmission. And our members were trained in radio use, receiving and transmitting, and Morse coding. That's what we were talking about here. And decoding or ciphering. And we were also trained in antenna deployments. There were areas that we stayed in, our antennas were just above the ceiling. And you could only pull whenever you want to connect to your radio. We had very advanced radios, a radio that was known as Proton. And for your information, Mrs. JD asked me this morning, where did I submit that radio today. And I felt, wow, yeah, but it was just that I couldn't believe that I can be asked that question today after so many years. But I submitted that radio system to Comrade Pomwana, and I think it went through the channels to Comrade Castles, I can't remember, but that's why it ended. That was a Proton radio, a very beautiful radio. I would pass around blogs with that radio, and Boaz would admire it. Where did you buy this radio? Because I just got it from an Indian shop. And it was, because when you look at it, it's like a very beautiful radio. And you cannot say, or you cannot relate it to a transmitter. In it is a transmitter, it's a receiver. It's a very beautiful one. I passed in roadblocks many times. It was literally pattern. Manivela roadblock and Cooper, because we sit the news and that justice. Yeah, and it was that. So we succeeded because of that technology, very, very advanced technology. And secondly, our operators were highly disciplined, and discipline was emphasized in almost all our meetings where we are informed. There will be conduct meetings where we are informed of changes, and in those meetings, radio discipline was highly emphasized. I want to thank really our instructors who enabled us to do that. I'm very, very thankful to you guys. And these radios, as Luke said, we were supported by the Russians, and the MK operators deployed in various parts of the country, as JB has said, and the Transvaal, Free State, and the Cape, where this unit is either, if Thabo is not there, the roving unit person was able to do the transmission that we expected of him. Operators received this coding, these codes, or what was called a one-time pad from couriers. Couriers would give us this, would give us for a week. So almost every week we've got to be in contact with couriers. And I also want to appreciate those couriers because they were very trustworthy people. We were never sold transmitting. We were never sold, not any, except for the broadest of which they were not caught with communication. So I'm really appreciating the work that was done by those people from the rear up until the people that we were in contact with, because it was easy to sell people really those days. The one-time pets, maybe Comrade Moses and Comrade Andy would talk more about that as to how they developed as an operator. I just took and used, I don't know how they were making those numbers, but we were getting that from them. And talking about the price of EWUs, Russia, as I said, is currently dominating. But some people in other blogs are talking about China now coming finishes with what they have. And actually, US, because some of us would really put US as far as other things, but in this regard, US have been beaten by Russians in as far as Italy, and now China is coming up heavily on this. And the future of electronic warfare. The EW, rather electronic warfare and other systems are rapid innovation towards new capabilities, longer range, and improved performance. So many underlying technologies from advancing antennas are overcoming limitations in existing systems. The 21st century of fourth industrial revolution is changing EW as a knowledge. They use EW in a youth might dominate in the session. A number of countries are planning to go to Mars and other planets, but I'm not sure what we are planning in South Africa. Maybe the likes of Comrade Mandela will go to tell us. This will give those countries much more advanced military space, and the space has always been a man's adventure since the beginning. The advances of today in space and the interplanetary travel will become commonplaces in the next 50 years. So our engineers, our studies must focus in these environments. And in conclusion, as we can see the developments of the past decades of EW, the possible future in front of us, we are challenged to dig deeper, ensuring that we invest for knowledge of subject matter. That is a challenge to our youth, mostly down the universities. The EW is continuously developing, and researchers must always occupy themselves in that ever-present. Agile to keep up with the trends, very flexible in terms of deployment and reduces latency. Major disadvantages of the traditional hardware approach to EW systems are the time it takes. So those that are in the sphere of EW, or at least they are in universities studying technologies that will save us if we must start focus. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure by now you will encourage your son or daughter to study electronic warfare and be part of the team that are led by Kumza. I'm sure they need more of these young people to study physics, radio, electromagnetic frequency spectrum. I mean, in the best interest of the country is one of the most fascinating things as explained by Kaka. What we will now be doing, Sister Jackie and Sister will walk to the exhibition open, and then we will then continue with the next sessions. So the people who will be speaking after us must be ready. They will be coming. In fact, we will be going. Thank you.